Philadelphia Phillies are 2008 World Champions of Baseball.
Lining up, Adrian Noble, and here it comes. Over the kick. Connects.
Philadelphia Eagles are Super Bowl champions. Eagles fans everywhere, this is for you.
Man, let's just get straight into it. No notes, no script, just pure, raw emotional thoughts, pure, just straight line through it, man. Talking about last night, AEW Fighter Fest. We're in week 1 of AEW Fighter Fest, night 1, AEW Dynamite. And, man, I really just love AEW so much, man. Obviously, I am referring to the fact that last night, Keith Lee and Isaiah Swerve Scott, or now known as Swerve Strickland, both men won the tag team championships last night in that amazing, honestly, match of the year contender triple threat tag match with Team Taz consisting of Ricky Starks and Powerhouse Hobbs and champion Young Bucks. I'm just blown away by the fact that they actually put the titles on them. I'm very surprised. I will admit I did want to see Starks and Hobbs get the titles as well, but I'm never gonna pass up the chance to see Keith Lee and Swerve Strickland get titles on them. I'm so happy for both of those guys, especially because, recently it seems like Keith Lee's going through some things, like personal, family-wise, so I'm just hoping the best for him and his family, and my prayers are out with him and his family for whatever they may be going through. But I'm super glad to see them just get those titles. I'm really blown away by their performance as a tag team. A lot of people kind of thought it was odd when both men, they debuted, had a couple singles matches, but like immediately aligned with one another, and entered this feud with Team Taz. People thought it was a bit odd to see the two men kind of form this makeshift tag team, and I'll be the first to say I'm, for the most part, not a big fan of when, wrestling companies do this, where they throw like two guys who are really known for being singles competitors and throw them into a tag team. It usually doesn't work out. It's kind of odd. The styles don't mesh that well, but my goodness, do the two of these men mesh pretty well for two dudes who, especially, I don't think have ever tagged with one another at all. Like, if I'm trying to remember, like, back to their indie days and stuff, I can't remember I really of note ever seen Swerve and Keith Lee tag together. So to be thrown into this opportunity and to just be so flawless as a tag team, they're really good as a tag team. I really love the way their styles clash between Keith Lee being the big guy, Swerve being like the fast-paced cruiserweight style working guy. It really works well together. They both have, like, if I'm recounting, because they both debuted in AEW. Was it really this year? Man, it's really been this year. They've been in AEW for only a couple months now. That's really shocking to me to think about, because time is a crazy concept, and so things that seem like they happened way further. Like I was thinking, man, they debuted last year, but no, they debuted this year. They formed that tag team back in, like, I want to say March. I think it might be March or April, one of the two. And here they are winning the tag titles in July. But my point being is they've only been a tag team for a short amount of time, but yet they have right now, in my mind, 3 potential match of the year contenders, and that is their triple threat with Jurassic Express and Ricky and Hobbs at Double or Nothing. Their tag match at Forbidden Door on the Forbidden Door pre-show against Kanemaru and Desperado, and then they now have this match with the Young Bucks and Team Taz. And I don't know, man. I'm just completely blown away by these two men. And, I shouldn't be surprised seeing as the two of them individually have always impressed me, whether it was, Swerve back in his Lucha Underground days, having those battles with AR Fox and, oh my gosh. He had that match with Sami Callihan in Lucha Underground, I'm pretty sure, if I remember correctly. It's been so long since I've rewatched the entirety of Lucha Underground, but that I think that was airing back when I was in middle school. My dad and I would always catch that. It was pretty cool to see. We really loved that show. And then of course Keith Lee, seeing the work this man's done all over the place in Evolve, in NXT, flashes of it on main roster of WWE, shouldn't be surprised, but yet the two men always just find a way to blow me out the waters. And like, just like getting into that match, it was so I didn't expect to get that invested into that match, because in my mind I'm like, okay, the Bucks just won the tag titles like a month ago. It's very clear that they are trying to set up some match with FTR for all the gold, potentially at All Out. This will be a retention. It will still be a good match though. But as the match kept going on, man, there was just so many cool spots. Obviously the funny spot is Ricky and one of the Young Bucks. Oh my gosh, what's the word for it? Is it tight walk? No. They're walking the ropes, and Ricky's having a pose down before talking smack to the Jackson, and then they both end up getting tripped and falling onto the ropes. There's also the spot where Ricky hits his pose with the Young Bucks before they super kick him. There's a part that oh man, I just really want to highlight. It's my gosh, I didn't notice this until someone pointed it out on Twitter. It was so great, where Ricky hit the spear on Swerve, and you see him getting that pin, and his face, man, he's like, like literally, like essentially like showing that he's crying, and he's like, oh, like, he's like, this is finally our moment, we're finally gonna do this before the pin gets broken up. And it's like, it genuinely sold that as the finish of the match, because you were like, dang, look at how emotional he's getting, man. He truly believes this is his moment. Like, this is their moment for Team Taz to finally get some AEW gold, man. Really good facial expressions from Ricky. That man is amazing. I want to see him hold singles gold sometime soon, man. I'm hoping, like, I think I listed him especially as like one of my top names that I was hoping would win the TNT title from Scorpio, just because, at that point anyone was, well, like I said in that video, Scorpio could have been booked a lot better, but there was just essentially people wanting better options, quote unquote. And if there was going to be one, I would have loved to seen him be one of them. And then like another person pointed out on Twitter, it's like, even now sitting here, like, the more I think about Swerve and Keith Lee winning, he puts it, the happier he gets. It's like a warm, feel-good conclusion to that stellar tag match. And, a lot of times people forget that, like, a lot of times wrestling can kind of be predictable, and sometimes it works out, sometimes it doesn't. But this was genuinely shocking to so many people to see these tag titles change, because titles rarely change on TV. Or, it's not that they rarely change, because obviously we saw Wardlow beat Scorpio Sky for the TNT title. I think that was last week. Wow, that's 2 title changes in a row. Yeah, that is. Yeah, so, but, it was just, like, that one people saw coming because, as I detailed in my video about the TNT title, it's just really been struggling, and they need someone like Wardlow to really propel it, which he did, because he had a really fun match with Orange Cassidy. He's very story-driven, about how they recognize that he's Goliath and Orange Cassidy is David, so they're going to try and use everything to their advantage to try and get him that win before he finally ultimately gets the win, or Goliath overcomes David this time. But, that was really fun, and it seems people are really starting to warm up to Wardlow again after a bit of a slow start from Double or Nothing. But, it's true, like I'm getting back to my main point, that, it was so unpredictable, but yet it just felt kind of right and cool to see, you know, like, oh man, like it wasn't like it wasn't unpredictable in the sense of comparing it to another like unpredictable moment, or not unpredictable but shocking moment. You know, when Jinder Mahal won the WWE Championship from Randy Orton, the fan reaction was like obviously shocked and surprised that it happened, but it was in more of a negative way. Whereas this one's like the fan reactions were so positive for this guy, or for these guys, you know, and it's one of those things where it's like Mr. Solis and I have said this a bunch when discussing our match of the year. You'll sometimes get those matches where you're just like, oh, it was good, but, you know, in quotations, because, you know, obviously there's no objective answer, but, you know, like in our opinions, the wrong guy won. And this isn't one of those matches where you're going to look at the end of the year and be like, oh, this match was good, but it would have been better had Starks and Hobbs won, Swerve and Lee won. You know, it's like, no. In my mind, yeah, the right guys won in terms of who are my favorites. You know, I'm pretty split evenly on whether it could have been Swerve and Lee or Starks and Hobbs. Like I mentioned, I'm really a big fan of both those teams and all four men individually. You know, I'm really high on Ricky Starks. I'm really high on really all four men. All four men are just really good. They have what it takes, you know. I know a lot of people will say Hobbs still has some growth to go, and that's true because you always want to continue growing and mastering your craft, but, you know, that man has improved leaps and bounds from when he first started. I remember seeing him show up on AEW Dark to face off against Orange Cassidy, and, you know, this is no offense, this is just me describing how he looked. You know, he was a big guy, you know, he was a big guy more leaning towards like Keith Lee's figure, just not obviously that big of a guy. But, you know, he came in, he wasn't as defined, but he was a big guy. And I remember being shocked that he was losing so much on Dark, even if he wasn't signed. I was like, man, how can you not have a guy this big, you know, be winning? And then they have the whole storyline where he finally joins Team Taz. And that man's transformation, honestly, you guys really should look into Will Hobbs' transformation. Because when he changed his name to Powerhouse, my goodness, did that fit. That man is so cut and defined now from when he first walked into AEW. He has the look. He's improved with his promos, and that's to be expected when you're next to a guy like Ricky. Obviously, you're gonna learn and hopefully get some rub off of Ricky and his promo skills, you know. And if you've been listening to this podcast for a while, you know how big of fans the Castillo family is of Keith Lee. And, you know, honestly, there was a post I saw like a while ago, again on Twitter, where someone was like, oh, what kind of made you a fan of wrestling again if you had fallen off of it? And, you know, after WrestleMania 30, when Daniel Bryan got injured after winning those world titles, my whole family as a whole kind of just stopped watching. I mean, obviously, like, we watched like bits and pieces before all that, you know. We didn't really keep up with wrestling consistently, but like that was our most consistent, I would say, from like 2012 to 2014. We were watching a ton. And then WrestleMania 30 happened, and it was like, oh man, it was so good to watch that live, obviously at home. But it was so good to watch Daniel Bryan's story get to that point. And then, you know, to see him get injured, it really kind of made me like lose interest at that point. Especially because like I was like I might have been like in 8th grade at that point. I don't remember, but like I don't know. It was just like I felt like I was starting to grow out of it. But then like 2 years later in 2016, I don't know. I guess my brother was just watching like some highlight videos on YouTube, and he was like, hey, do you want to get the WWE Network, you know, since they have those prepaid cards so you don't have to use your credit card. You know, he's telling my dad, he's like, do you want to get it to watch SummerSlam? And I said sure. And so we watched it, but you know, I don't know what kept the interest going after that. I think, but like I ended up getting it because we were like, hey, let's watch Survivor Series. And then I remember seeing that Saturday we weren't really doing anything, and I saw, oh, NXT is having a takeover, and I remember NXT because, again, back in 2014, I remember watching the rise of Sami Zayn on NXT and stuff, and his rise to winning the NXT championship, hence him being in the intro. He's one of my big favorites. But, so I was like, hey, Pops, because I don't know where my brother was, so I was like, hey, Pops, do you want to just check this out? NXT is pretty, like, from what I remember back in the Sami Zayn days, they're pretty good, but, like, I don't know who's wrestling on this card, and if you're understanding the timelines, this was NXT TakeOver Toronto 2016, and you already know what matches on that card. DIY versus The Revival, 2 out of 3 Falls tag team match for the tag titles. And I just remember sitting there watching that match with my dad, and we were so blown away, and we were just like, that may be one of the greatest tag matches we've ever seen of all time. Like, that was so good, storytelling wise, match wise, and everything. And the whole point I'm getting is, like, at that point, we kind of started watching, but again, we weren't watching like on a consistent basis. Like, we weren't watching the weekly shows, obviously, and it's like we weren't even watching the pay-per-views really. Like, we had the network for, like, because of those 3-month cards, but like I rarely remember watching a lot of those pay-per-views from like that time. It's like, I mean, I remember watching the Rumble and Mania those years, and maybe even Mania 34. I can't remember if we actually watched that one. I feel like we might have. I know for sure we watched like the Rumbles, but like, we missed out on a ton, especially because like during that time, I was just prioritizing money. Obviously, I didn't want to, invest in something that I wasn't going to be constantly using when it came to the network, especially because it's like it was always having to hunt down those prepaid cards because of not wanting to use credit card for our own reasons and personal reasons that I won't get into. But so then like after that, it was like there was still like a falling off point where it's like, yeah, I really like watched a lot of stuff during that time, especially like Asuka's run. My dad really enjoyed watching Asuka's run, but like, again, it wasn't a consistent thing until 2020 comes rolling around, and at this point I hadn't been watching wrestling. Like, I missed the entire year of wrestling of 2018 and 2019, and so my brother comes around and goes, hey, are we gonna get the network to watch the Rumble? And I'm like confused. I'm like, what are you talking about, man? We haven't paid for the network in a while. He was like, come on, let's just get it to watch the Rumble. And I'm like, all right, fine, whatever. Again, he probably was watching some highlights, and so that's where he got his interest. And so we got it, and of course that's where Edge made his big return after, what was it, 9 years away? Yeah, I think it was 9 years away after injuring his neck. And being forced to retire. He comes out of retirement with that big return. And then right after that, TakeOver Portland happens. And again, my dad and I are just completely blown away by the opening match of Keith Lee versus Dominik Dijakovic and all the matches afterwards. And from there, it's just been set in stone. We've been watching ever since then consistently. I've been watching every pay-per-view because of the network. And then when they switched over, regrettably, to Peacock. But also, the main point I've been trying to get at since I started this whole rant is we ended up going back to watch, and we just watched a ton of Keith Lee stuff because my brother was showing us all these clips. So, we watched the War Games match that he was in and his crazy performance in there with all the other guys. We watched a ton of his other matches since starting in NXT. So we've been a big fan of Keith Lee. My dad and I both did we yeah, we stayed up and watched because unlike AEW that shows early over here in the West Coast, like, I'm able to watch it at 5 instead of having to wait till like what would it be, like 7 o'clock or whatever. But NXT is not like that, and WWE is not like that. So we had to wait. We had to stay up till 8 and then basically till 10 o'clock to watch Keith Lee win the NXT championship. And then you can obviously imagine the bit of disappointment when he went up to the WWE main roster, and I mean, he was starting off good, he was having good momentum, and then he gets COVID, and then he has those health issues that kept him out for almost half the year, really. And it was a really scary time, and we were like, during that time, me and my dad were just like, man, just hope whatever's going on with him health-wise, he's doing good. He's staying healthy. He's getting taken care of. And then, of course, he returns. And, I won't get into it much because, I don't want to upset any people with my opinions. But, it just wasn't the best of booking for Keith Lee. And he gets his release. And generally, it shocked me. But, at this point, I've come to the point where I have the thought process of it's a shame that someone gets fired, but it's another door opening for those people to go out and explore what else is out there for them, and to see if they can get more opportunities elsewhere. I start to look at it as a positive because I understand the business side of things, and I just always look at it with optimism that I know that these people, a lot of these people that get released are some of the best, they're some of the best athletes in this world. So I always know, that they're going to do well, which is why when Swerve got released too, I was like, you know what, man, those two guys are going to be fine. They're going to go somewhere where they're just going to showcase their abilities and, showcase their talents. Because a lot of people may not agree, but really I look at Keith Lee and Swerve as two world title material guys. The two of them have everything. Swerve has youth on his side, along with his his amazing storytelling, his charisma that he has, his promo ability that he has. A lot of people may bring up the size, but hey, man, look at a bunch of guys in history, man. You'll be surprised how many guys were quote unquote smaller guys, but like I said, Swerve, he has youth on his side. He's only 31. That's usually the prime of people's careers. Keith Lee, I believe he's a bit up there in age. He's 37. So, but we've seen a lot of guys wrestle and even have classic matches well into their 40s. So Keith Lee can definitely still give you I think he can give you at least 5 years right now of being a world title material guy, because I think him and Swerve are really good talents, and I'm glad Tony Khan picked them up, and gave them this opportunity and gave them really all this TV time to just shine, and as well as being very understanding. If you saw, his interview, he was talking about he wasn't gonna disclose any of what's been happening with Keith Lee, that it's his business to tell. Just really cool to see him do that. And another thing too is that there's always this big thing in wrestling where when it comes to representation, people just simply they want to see people just want to see people who look like them wrestling on TV, and sometimes, depending on how would you say, depending on the area, sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. In movies, you'll see a lot of controversy come out of it, and my only thing is the way they do it, because of for me, it's about the message that they're sending when they do it. I have no issue with them. Obviously, I have no issue with them. Being like, oh, we gotta get let's have a very diverse cast. I don't. You think I'd care about that? It's like, no, that's a good thing to see. So many groups of people being represented on the big screen. But my issue is when they're doing it for the sole sake of good PR. Because at that point, and people always eat it up, and I'm just like, can you not see what they're doing? When they do this stuff, like, they're not doing it because they care about us and want to represent us properly on that screen. They're doing it just so they can get the good PR of, oh, look, we have a diverse cast, but yet there's only one black guy casted, or there's only one Hispanic or Asian person casted. It's like, you're not doing it for the sake of representation. You're doing it for the sake of going, oh, we need to fulfill this. Here, give it so they can be satisfied. They're not doing it out of the genuine. They're not doing it out of the genuine sake of their heart. And similarly in wrestling, it's like, Well, actually, no, not similarly in wrestling, because wrestling has always been different because of, the, like, I don't know how to explain it, but, like, it never feels that way, in the sense of, like, I guess you could say it never feels forced, but I don't want to make it seem like a bad thing, like in movies. 'Cause, like, the example I can give you is, like, I remember it got big, the actor who plays, what was it, James Bond 007, he was talking about, like it made headlines because obviously the media is known for doing this. They were like misquoting him and being like, oh, he's saying a woman shouldn't play James Bond, but that's not what he was saying. He was saying, why not create a new character, like a female character of like a female version of a spy, and like basically complete this whole new character that's a female spy, and have a woman play that instead of having them play the James Bond role. And the reasoning behind it, and it's something I agree with, is like, if you're gonna do this, you're gonna change things up. All you're doing is setting up that poor person, whoever gets casted, to get hated on online, which is why, I'm so like passionate about this, and I hate the fact that, like I mentioned, when they do the representation for good PR and like a good image, and it's not genuine, because they suffer nothing from it, but the actors do. The people who are casted into those roles. When you change a character's race, and like, let's say it was a white character and they cast a black guy, it's like, is the studio gonna catch flack for that? No, the poor actor who got casted as that character is now going to be getting hate online because what, they just decided to essentially apply for that role, and they got hired for that role. People are gonna start hating on them like they were the ones that chose to do that. It's like, and like similarly, it's like if you were to do that, like going back to the James Bond example, it's like you're just gonna set that poor woman up for hate online, because they're gonna be hating on the fact that, they changed James Bond. But it's like, why are you going to the person to complain? Like that's what my issue is when it comes to that. Is like, it's they never put genuine thought and care into actually representing the people on that screen, unless it's the people, the people of that color, if the people behind it are, African American, Hispanic, Asian, when they're behind it, they know how to properly represent the people that they're displaying, much like how the Black Panther movie was able to represent like all those different cultures in Africa. A lot of times they're not putting in that effort, and it's upsetting to me because, like I said, it just means poor innocent people are now getting hated on. I mean, look at how much hate John Boyega got for just being in the Star Wars movies. That man was so passionate about the Star Wars movies, but yet that fan base just completely hated on him for what, And so, like in wrestling, huge rant right there, but I promise it ties into, when it comes to wrestling. It's similar where people want to see them on that screen, and a lot of people had issues with AEW, and especially Tony Khan, especially I think it was like earlier this year. It's crazy to think, but like even like since it started, where people were like, "Hey, Tony, there's not that many African American people on your show, and then like at the time people were like, compared to WWE, they have all these people, and it's funny how the script has flipped, because now there is only see, this is the issue with not having a script, but there's only like, I don't know how accurate, I think there's only one, when it comes to the female wrestlers, there's only one African American woman, and that's Bianca Belair, because Sasha Banks and Naomi aren't there. Obviously, trying to name them off the top of my head, they have Bobby Lashley on the main roster, obviously, Angelo Dawkins, Montez Ford, Ricochet, Apollo Crews, Big E, Xavier Woods, Kofi. So I mean, they still have talent, but when it comes to the like women's division, people have been noticing, it's like, hey, it's only Bianca Belair. What's up with that? But people had that issue kind of with AEW, where they're like, hey, Tony, you don't got enough black talent over there. And so in an interview again, Tony Khan, I kind of, understood that issue. It was like, yeah, hey, why don't you got that many African American people on your roster, And, Tony Khan explained it, or like semi-explained it really, but like he kind of gave his reasoning in an interview where he was like, hey, there wasn't, like, obviously there was names on the market, but there wasn't like the big recognizable names because all of them were like in WWE. But then what happens? Keith Lee, Swerve become available, Athena becomes available. And now you look at the AEW roster, and again, you have Ricky, you have Powerhouse Hobbs, you have Private Party, obviously, who's been there for a while now. Lee Moriarty. The Acclaimed. Oh, man, I loved it. I used to not really like the Acclaimed, but I'm really loving them now. They're really entertaining. Scorpio Sky, obviously, again, one that's been there for a while. They obviously signed Stokely. They have a ton of women. Oh, someone slapped me in the face. How could I forget? They have Jade Cargill. Of course, yeah. So, like, people have been really praising, AEW for the change up that they had, where it's like they went from not having that many black talent to they have a ton, and they're getting proper TV time, whether it's the Acclaimed, whether it's Swerve and Lee, whether it's Starks and Hobbs, whether it's Jade and Athena, it's like they're getting TV time and all that. And this is going to tie into a whole thing because, let me make sure I say this too. I should have said this at the beginning because I already know people are going to get into this. AEW isn't perfect. It obviously has its issues. One of the main issues, the women's division, but yesterday again kind of showed the improvement because there was the match between Serena Deeb and Anna Jay. There was obviously the segments between Thunder Rosa, Toni Storm, Britt Baker, Jamie Hayter. There was a segment with Jade Cargill, Kiera Hogan. They had all these segments for them, and I know people are going to be like, oh, well, they still didn't get as many matches as the men, or, all the promos were backstage. And I agree that, I wish the women would start getting more in-ring promos like the men do, But it's something that I've noticed, like it's obviously... It's something that's different between company to company, and it's something that that AEW does. It's like they're so fast paced, and so it's like, they don't really take the time to really like they want to utilize their time as best they could, which is why they have so many of these backstage segments. Because you look at the backstage segments, most of them don't even last like a minute. Like yesterday, they were like, "Oh, we're gonna talk to Hangman Page," and he said like 2 sentences before he gets interrupted by Silver and Reynolds. And that backstage segment was just to set up a match on Rampage for House of Black versus Dark Order. It's like it was only like a 1-minute segment, and that's what it was all just set up. So it's like it makes sense that they want to utilize the backstage promos more, because what would be the point of having Jade make her entrance just to like cut a 1-minute promo that gets interrupted and then they go to the back afterwards? It's like it for a lot of people, it's like, yes, like I said, I would love for them to start getting more in-ring stuff. But, it makes also sense when you look at the way they run their show, where it's just like, well, yeah, if all these backstage promos only last like a minute or two and get interrupted anyways, you might as well use that time best by having it backstage rather than taking the time for people to make their entrance, walk down to the ring, talk, have to deal with maybe the crowd interfering with the promo, all for it to go like longer than what it would go in a backstage promo. And WWE does the same thing from times, if they know they're going to have a promo that gets interrupted, then they have it backstage, because again, there's no point in wasting time. It's something that a lot of companies do, it's the best way to utilize the amount of time you have, but, again, there's still some issues there, but yeah, it's like, that's another, like, it's one of the main things I love about AEW is that they have been improving on like a week-to-week basis, and yearly they've been improving, where it's like I mentioned, yeah, people saw an issue with the fact that there wasn't that much black talent being either utilized or showcased on TV. Bunch of names become available, as well as And again, yeah, a bunch of names become available, and people were like, "Oh, what about some of these guys who have been there since day one?" It was like they had to wait for a lot of that talent to become available since day one. I mean, they've been booking Scorpio Sky pretty consistently since he showed up. Obviously, the main one that people have an issue with is Private Party, but then think about it, it's like it wasn't until 2020 that they got Ricky Starks. It wasn't till 2020 that they got Powerhouse Hobbs. It wasn't till last year that they got wait, who did they get last year? I don't know. Maybe they didn't get someone last year. I'm trying to think. Or didn't Jay Lethal show up last year? I think he showed up last year. And then they had the Acclaim, and then they had to wait till this year to get, Swerve and Keith Lee. It wasn't until last year that they got Jade Cargill, I think, right? I think Jade Cargill, was it last year or was it 2020, man? I really can't remember. See, that's how difficult it is, understanding the concept of time. But, like for some of these talents, especially like with the bigger names, they had to wait for them to be available. But, I still, will give them props for, recognizing what the fans were calling for and giving it to them, It's something that AEW kind of is known for doing well, and like is also something they catch a lot of flack for, where people are like, "Oh, you're catering too much towards this crowd," but it's like, why wouldn't you want to cater to that crowd, These are the people who are there on a week-to-week basis, watching, showing up to the shows. Cater to them because they're your most loyal audience. Obviously, you want to grow, but like, what's the point of, what's the point of catering to a casual audience when, again, it's like they're it's in the name, they're casual. It's not like they're the ones that are, feeding into your product the most. It's your hardcore fan base that's doing that. They're like I said, they're the ones showing up on a weekly basis, watching your shows, and that's something, again, AEW has me, it's not consistently, but they have me for the most part watching their show weekly, something I haven't done in years. The last time I watched weekly shows was probably 2013, when I kept having to tune in week after week to see what happened with Daniel Bryan. That is what, 10 years ago? Realistically, 9 years ago, because it was really in 2021 that I started watching, not necessarily on a week-to-week basis, but like I started catching, and really this year and late into last year have been my most consistent times of just showing up, like sitting there and letting my family know, hey, Wednesday, 5 to 7, pretty much don't bother me. I'm more than likely going to be watching AEW. And why? Because yeah, the whole show I may not like, like there may be parts of the show where I'm just like, oh, this doesn't pique my interest. But for the most part, they're always throwing in matches, segments, whatever, storylines that get me invested. The Kenny and Hangman storyline, the Malachi Black when he first showed up, I was super interested in watching week to week to see what he does, and now waiting to see what House of Black do. Swerve and Keith Lee, getting to watch them on a weekly basis. Like I said, the Acclaimed, Team Taz showing up. Who else do I enjoy watching on this show, man? Chris Statlander, Jade. Obviously, when they got Ruby, I really enjoyed that. Thunder Rosa. Again, I have a lot of issues with the women's division, especially in the fact that I just wish they would do a little bit more, especially to get people interested into it, get people intrigued by it. But I enjoy watching their women's division. I really love their tag division the most, I love their mid-card. I love their ability to really make you care about just certain people, even if they aren't involved in like title scenarios. Like, for example, the whole storyline and story arc of Wheeler Yuta just going from a random member that randomly joined Best Friends to his whole journey into joining the Blackpool Combat Club was amazing to me, getting to watch the Lucha Bros Impact, the storyline with Miro going on. Even the Jericho Appreciation Society is interesting to me, but that's mainly because of 2.0. I'm more interested in 2.0 than any of the members there, just because they're extremely funny and stuff. They just do a lot of stuff that I just really like. The stories that they tell, that's kind of just what this video was all about, was just kind of talking about, again, why I love AEW, especially after yesterday. Just they do some really great stuff over there. They get my interest peaked. They get me tuning in. My only issue is their pay-per-views, because I'm sorry, but it's just so difficult to pay $50 for a pay-per-view, even if it's only for a year. So like, it has to be a really good card for it, or have something like that I need to see on that card. Like, for example, All Out last year, I needed to see CM Punk's return to wrestling. Full Gear last year, I needed to see Hangman win that title. Forbidden Door this year, I needed to see the first ever crossover event between AEW and New Japan. And of course, man, y'all saw the video not yesterday. Wait, was it? No, it was Tuesday. Y'all saw the video from Tuesday, so you already know the rumors of, of Stardom sending out their talents to work New Japan Strong shows, meaning they're going to be in the US, meaning there's quite possibilities for them to show up on AEW. And before, I used to be like, oh man, I wouldn't want to see that because of, TK is kind of struggling to book his women's division, and there's not a lot of, a lot of them are still kind of green in the sense, like they haven't been trained as long as some of these wrestlers in Stardom. I don't know how well that will mesh, but then over time, my opinion just started changing, where it's like, no, I want to see it happen now, because there's so many names I just want to see face off against one another. Specifically, a lot of the powerhouse women there. I want to see someone like Chris Statlander go against a lot of the names in AEW. I want to see in AEW. What am I saying? In Stardom, I want to see Thunder Rosa go against a lot of those stiffer, hard-hitting workers of Stardom. So they got a lot of stuff planned. They get my interest peaked a lot. They're honestly having me enjoy wrestling so much in this current time period, man. I really enjoy them. I really enjoy what they're doing. And at the same time, I'm also enjoying what everyone else is doing in the wrestling world and what they're contributing to it. I'm loving Stardom. I'm loving what New Japan gives me from time to time, especially with their G1 Climax starting soon. And yes, even though there's a lot of things I don't like, even though there's a lot of things I disagree with them, with their decisions, there are still parts, though they may be few, there are still parts I enjoy about WWE. Because yes, it is possible to enjoy different promotions. It is possible to enjoy all these things that they may provide, and understanding that they provide different things. No, that doesn't mean you're forced to like every company, but that doesn't mean just because you like one promotion, you can't go and like other promotions. And you shouldn't hate on other people for liking those other promotions. But with that being said, thank you all for joining for another episode of the Game Day podcast. As always, remember, many things in this life may seem impossible, but if you fight for your dreams will fight for you.